Carl Jung's most profound and indeed most dangerous discovery wasn't merely about healing from past wounds. It was about the ultimate evolution of the empath after enduring the crucible of narcissistic abuse, a transformative journey that either shatters the soul completely or forges something psychologically unprecedented, a new paradigm of human consciousness. Jung meticulously documented empaths in his clinical practice who, having survived systematic narcissistic manipulation, reached what he termed the final stage of empathic development. These were individuals who had undergone a complete psychological metamorphosis, emerging not with typical recovery stories, but with what Jung called integrated shadow consciousness and an impenetrable immunity to all forms of manipulation. He deemed this discovery dangerous because empaths who attained this sovereign state often became utterly unrecognizable to those who knew them before. Having transcended their former selves to embody a new level of being, they developed what Jung described as sovereign empathy, the extraordinary capacity to feel the deepest currents of human experience while remaining psychologically untouchable, grounded in an unwavering sense of self. This wasn't a hardening of the heart, but a profound mastery over it, creating a level of consciousness Jung had rarely, if ever, encountered. Today, we unveil Jung's most revolutionary insight, how this devastating experience either annihilates empathic sensitivity forever, leaving a hollow shell, or transforms it into the archetypal wounded healer, a form of consciousness that transcends both the painful shackles of victimhood and the mere act of surviving, blossoming into true thrivership. The phenomenon first revealed itself dramatically in 1928, with a patient Jung privately referred to as M, this 3-4-year-old woman whose extraordinary empathic gifts had tragically attracted a succession of increasingly destructive narcissistic partners, arrived in Jung's care psychically dissolved. Her sense of self was so eroded that the boundary between her own emotions and those swirling around her had vanished. Yet, over the following 2 years, Jung documented something truly extraordinary. M didn't just recover. She underwent what he described as an alchemical transformation through shadow integration. Where she had once been permeable to every emotional current, a sponge absorbing all, she developed conscious permeability, the profound ability to choose precisely what to absorb and what to deflect. Jung, with awe in his notes, wrote, "M has achieved something I previously thought impossible: complete empathic sovereignty. She can feel the depths of another's pain without drowning in it. She can detect deception with supernatural accuracy. Most remarkably, she has become immune to manipulation while retaining her capacity for genuine compassion." This transformation was so radical that Jung questioned if M was even the same person. Her family, once accustomed to her role as their emotional caretaker, immediately noticed the change, confronting her with unbreakable boundaries. Former friends accused her of becoming cold or different, but Jung recognized something far deeper. Moore had reached the final stage of empathic development, a state he had only theorized was possible. He observed a striking change in her eyes. "They hold depths I've never seen," he wrote, "as if she has gazed into the abyss of human nature and emerged not broken, but wise, incandescent with an inner knowing." Jung realized that narcissistic abuse creates what he termed the empathic crucible, a psychological pressure cooker that either utterly destroys the empath's spirit or, for the fortunate few, forges it into something infinitely more refined and powerful, like a diamond born from immense pressure. The key to this alchemical process lies in understanding shadow integration through forced individuation. During the torment of narcissistic abuse, the empath is systematically compelled to confront their own shadow, those disowned or rejected parts of themselves. The narcissist, Jung observed, unwittingly acts as an unconscious shadow mirror, reflecting back the empath's own latent capacity for manipulation, selfishness, or emotional detachment, forcing a reckoning. Jung documented that empaths typically traverse the three deaths during this harrowing process. First, the death of their idealized self-image as purely good and endlessly giving. Second, the death of their naive belief that love alone can heal anyone, even the most fractured souls. Third, and most crucially, the death of their desperate need for external validation to feel worthy. The empath must face their own shadow, Jung wrote, not through gentle introspection, but through brutal confrontation with their own capacity for darkness. The narcissist, in their unconscious role as a dark priest of initiation, becomes the unwilling catalyst for this essential psychological work, pushing the empath towards an undeniable truth. Stage 2. The unconscious absorption. Because your psyche developed a unique permeability for survival reasons, you begin absorbing these ambient energies without a conscious choice. Jung famously termed this participation mystique. The unconscious, profound identification with others' psychological states, a merging of energetic fields. These empaths retained their exquisite sensitivity, but gained what he described as a conscious filtering capacity. They could sense everything, yet consciously choose what to process, what to allow in, and what to release. Jung noted this was akin to the mastery achieved by advanced meditation practitioners, but uniquely, it was forged through the fires of trauma rather than years of spiritual discipline. He wrote, "The narcissist, in their unconscious role as shadow teacher, forces the empath to develop psychological muscles they never knew they possessed, transforming perceived weakness into undeniable strength. When empaths remain unconscious of their profound alchemical nature, they risk becoming mere emotional sponges instead of powerful psychological alchemists, absorbing everything without conscious transmutation." But Jung, with his extraordinary intuition, understood something that neuroscience would only prove decades later. These places don't merely inflict temporary damage, they fundamentally rewire your default mental state. Spend enough time immersed in toxic psychological environments, and your brain begins to recreate their destructive patterns, even when you are physically alone and seemingly safe. This created what Jung termed the consciousness gap, an often unbridgeable divide between those who had integrated their shadow and those who remained oblivious to it. Jung's patient poignantly described this phenomenon. "It's as if I can see the psychological machinery of everyone around me, their defenses, their projections, their hidden motivations. It's all transparent now, but this clarity has cost me almost every relationship I had." Jung realized this was the hidden danger, the bittersweet fruit of empathic evolution. These individuals had developed archetypal sight, the ability to see past superficial personas and into the deeper psychological patterns driving human behavior. While this made them incredibly powerful healers, guides, and truth-tellers, it also made ordinary social interaction nearly impossible. Jung wrote, "They have eaten from the tree of psychological knowledge, and like Adam and Eve, they can never return to the garden of unconscious innocence." The most disturbing aspect was that many people instinctively recoiled from these evolved empaths. Jung noted that others could sense, even unconsciously, that these individuals could see through their psychological defenses, their masks, and their unexamined selves. This created what Jung called the prophet's isolation, being rejected not for being wrong, but for seeing too clearly, for illuminating truths others weren't ready to face. Jung termed this persona identification, a tragic state where the mask you present to the world becomes the only identity you recognize, a shell devoid of a true self. Through his extensive case studies, Jung identified 4 distinct pathways empaths might take after narcissistic abuse, with only one leading to the final stage of sovereign development. 1. The dissolved empath. These empaths never recover their sense of self. Jung observed they become psychic ghosts, present physically but not truly alive. Their identity, a fragmented echo. They've lost the ability to distinguish their own emotions from others and live in a constant state of overwhelming emotional chaos. Jung noted, these empaths often develop perpetual victim consciousness, repeatedly attracting similar abusive dynamics, forever caught in a painful loop. 2. The armored empath. These empaths protect themselves by shutting down their empathic abilities entirely, building psychological fortresses around their hearts. While they effectively avoid further abuse, they also tragically lose access to their extraordinary gift. Jung noted they often become cynical, emotionally disconnected, and hardened, essentially choosing safety over the vibrant authenticity of their true nature. 3. The wounded healer. Incomplete integration. These empaths transform their trauma into a powerful mission to help others. While admirable, Jung warned this type often remains trapped in compulsive rescue patterns. They learn to set boundaries, but still derive their fundamental worth from being needed, from being the savior. Jung observed, they haven't fully integrated their shadow and remain vulnerable to sophisticated manipulation, as their core need to be the good one can still be exploited. Because performance theaters compel you to hide your true self, you become vulnerable to the fourth dangerous place, the silent, suffering space. This is where genuine emotional needs are meticulously buried beneath a fragile illusion of stability and tranquility. Jung frequently encountered this in his practice. Patients from outwardly perfect families, where love was assumed but never explicitly expressed, where problems were meticulously ignored rather than courageously addressed, and where maintaining appearances mattered infinitely more than fostering genuine connection. Jung identified specific characteristics of these sovereign empaths. They can feel others' emotions with exquisite precision without taking responsibility for them. They detect manipulation instantly, but respond with compassion and wisdom rather than anger or fear. They maintain boundaries that are fluid and strong, like a gentle current that cannot be crossed, rather than rigid walls. And they've developed archetypal wisdom, understanding human behavior at the deepest psychological and spiritual levels, seeing the grand tapestry of human experience. But Jung uncovered an even deeper truth about this delicate process. The wounded healer can only truly activate healing in others to the precise extent that they have diligently done their own shadow work, integrating their own past pains. If you are unconsciously carrying unintegrated trauma like a subtle energetic leak, your aura becomes subtly contaminated with what we call bleeding energy. Instead of inspiring genuine healing, you unconsciously invite others to wound you in the very same patterns you have yet to fully heal within yourself. Jung documented several profound challenges inherent in reaching this final stage of empathic development, dangers that made him question whether this evolution was truly worth the cost in human terms. The isolation factor. Sovereign empaths often live in profound isolation. They have outgrown the psychological level of most humans, he wrote. Like adults trying to relate to children, the gap in consciousness creates an unbridgeable divide. Many reported feeling like aliens in their own families and communities, seeing a different reality, the burden of sight. These empaths could no longer unsee the psychological patterns driving human behavior. Jung noted they often experienced archetypal fatigue, an exhaustion from constantly witnessing the same unconscious patterns playing out in human relationships, like watching a tragic play on repeat. They could predict relationship failures, see through political manipulation, and detect emotional patterns years before they manifested. A constant, often unwelcome clarity. The responsibility weight. Jung documented that many sovereign empaths felt burdened by their abilities. They could see clear solutions to others' problems, but knew that unsolicited insight is rarely welcomed, often resented. This created what Jung called the Cassandra complex, having accurate psychological insights that others reject or simply cannot understand, leaving them with unspoken truths. The authenticity demand. Perhaps most challenging, Jung observed that these empaths could no longer tolerate inauthenticity in themselves or others. They had become truth sensors, immediately detecting when someone was being false, manipulative, or disingenuous. This made maintaining superficial social relationships extremely difficult, as they could no longer play along with unconscious games. Jung wrote, "They have achieved psychological mastery, but often at the cost of normal human connection. They experience what we call recognition resonance, the profound joy of being truly seen, deeply understood, and authentically accepted for who they truly are, in all their vulnerability and strength. But unconscious people, those actively avoiding their inner landscape, often feel a profound disturbance or discomfort around awakened empaths. This is because your aura, with its unwavering clarity, reflects their own shadow material, the very parts of themselves they are desperately trying to avoid, deny, or suppress." Archetypal possession. Jung identified a subtle but dangerous trap. Some empaths became so identified with their role as healers or truth-tellers that they lost touch with their own fragile humanity, becoming possessed by the very archetype they embodied, losing their grounding. To navigate this treacherous yet transformative path, Jung developed what he called the shadow integration protocol, specifically for empaths recovering from narcissistic abuse. This was not traditional therapy, but a process he described as psychological alchemy, transforming the lead of trauma into the pure gold of wisdom. 1. Stage 1. Shadow acknowledgement. Jung insisted empaths must first acknowledge their own capacity for manipulation, selfishness, and even cruelty. "You cannot integrate what you refuse to own," he wrote. This involves recognizing how their empathic gifts may have been unconsciously used to control others, how their victimhood may have been subtly weaponized, and how their goodness may have been a mask for deeper psychological needs, like the need for approval. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's extensive research on trauma reveals that chronic self-abandonment literally severs your connection to your body's innate wisdom. You lose the ability to recognize what you genuinely need, want, or feel, because those vital internal signals have been consistently overridden, silenced, and ignored. Jung called this soul loss, not a mystical concept, but a profound psychological reality where you become utterly estranged from your own core self, your very essence. The patient lamented, "I felt like I was living someone else's life." 3. Stage 3. Boundary alchemy. Rather than building impenetrable walls, Jung taught conscious permeability, the ability to choose, moment by moment, what to absorb and what to deflect. This involves developing empathic discernment, feeling without fixing, understanding without compulsively rescuing, and loving deeply without losing oneself in the process, like a skilled sailor navigating treacherous waters. 4. Stage 4. Archetypal alignment. Jung believed the final stage involved aligning with the wounded healer archetype, accepting that their profound suffering had meticulously prepared them for a specific, vital role in the collective unconscious. This isn't about becoming a professional healer, but about embodying the integration of wisdom and compassion that Jung believed was essential for human evolution itself. The patient told him, "I succeeded at everything I was supposed to want, but I felt completely hollow inside. I didn't know who I was beneath all the should-dos and have-tos." But here lies Jung's most profound insight regarding empathic auras. You are not just processing individual emotions. You are intimately connected to what he called the collective unconscious, the vast, shared psychic space that contains the entirety of humanity's experiences, its deepest fears, its soaring aspirations, its unexamined traumas, and its collective wisdom. Jung discovered that empaths serve as what we can call collective antennae. You are unconsciously tuning into the emotional frequencies of entire groups, communities, even vast, global consciousness patterns. Success pattern. Carl Jung himself. Jung revealed in his private writings that his own groundbreaking psychological theories emerged from surviving what he called psychological persecution by authority figures who relentlessly tried to manipulate his empathic nature. Peter Levine's foundational research on trauma reveals that unprocessed emotional content literally resides within your nervous system, creating chronic dysregulation until it is consciously integrated and healed. Success pattern. Historically documented cases. Jung documented several patients who achieved similar integration. 1. A composer who survived an abusive marriage channeled her trauma into music that Jung described as archetypal, speaking directly to the collective unconscious with universal resonance. Another, a physician, developed unprecedented diagnostic abilities after surviving psychological manipulation by colleagues, her intuition sharpened by adversity. But Jung also issued a powerful warning. Empaths must learn to consciously distinguish between personal and collective material, or they risk what he called psychic inflation, taking on an unsustainable, often narcissistic, responsibility for healing wounds that truly belong to all of humanity. If you've ever felt utterly overwhelmed by world events or sensed collective emotions that were clearly not your own, then you are indeed feeling the world's pain, and this wisdom is for you. Warning signs: you're avoiding the shadow basement. You experience intense emotional reactions that take you by surprise. You find yourself repeating relationship patterns despite knowing better. You judge others harshly for traits you secretly fear or despise in yourself. You experience persistent anxiety or depression with no discernible cause, and you feel as though you're engaged in a perpetual battle against an invisible enemy within. Jung wrote, "The difference between the sovereign empath and the destroyed empath is not the severity of their trauma, but their willingness to transform poison into medicine, to transmute suffering into wisdom." The failure pattern always involved what Jung called shadow rejection, a stubborn refusal to acknowledge their own capacity for the very behaviors that had wounded them, thus remaining incomplete. This is not a weakness. It is a sophisticated, advanced form of consciousness that Jung called differentiated perception. Start tracking your energy levels throughout your day. Notice which people, places, and activities genuinely energize you versus those that subtly or overtly drain you. Jung termed this energy accounting, becoming consciously aware of how your empathic gifts are being used and, crucially, how they might be being abused. Recognition signals. Jung identified that other evolved empaths could be recognized by their ability to discuss psychology without becoming defensive, their comfort with paradox and contradiction, their genuine lack of need to be right or superior, and what Jung called archetypal humor, the profound ability to find lightness and even cosmic irony in the darkest human patterns. They possess an unmistakable resonance, a shared frequency, safe relationship characteristics. Jung noted that healthy relationships for sovereign empaths involved mutual respect for psychological boundaries, a comfortable silence without the need to fill space with chatter, the ability to discuss shadow aspects without judgment, and what Jung termed conscious intimacy connection, based on authentic self-revelation rather than projection or neediness. Community-building strategies. Jung recommended that sovereign empaths seek out others who had undergone similar transformative experiences, not necessarily narcissistic abuse, but any profound experience that forced rapid psychological evolution. He noted that trauma survivors, spiritual seekers who had genuinely faced their shadow, and individuals who had navigated major life transitions often made compatible companions, forming a tribe of the awakened. Jung warned against trying to maintain relationships with unconscious individuals out of guilt or obligation. "The butterfly cannot pretend to still be a caterpillar," he wrote. "Attempting to do so serves no one and dishonors the sacred transformation." He also recommended archetypal service. using their evolved empathic abilities to serve the collective unconscious through teaching, healing, creating, or simply modeling integrated consciousness. Their very presence becomes a beacon. Jung documented that the transformation from wounded empath to sovereign empath follows what he called the 5 metamorphoses, each marked by specific psychological shifts and profound challenges, much like the stages of a hero's journey. 1. Metamorphosis. 1. The dissolution. This occurs during active abuse, when the empath's previous identity completely breaks down. Jung noted this feels like psychological death, a terrifying void, but is actually ego dissolution, a necessary destruction of the false self, preparing the ground for rebirth. The empath experiences blessed disintegration, the shattering of old, limiting self-concepts. The patient, after 6 months of dedicated effort, told Jung, "I didn't realize how much mental energy I was spending just surviving in those toxic spaces. Now that I've left them, I feel like I have my mind back, truly back." 3. Metamorphosis. 3. The integration. The empath begins consciously choosing which aspects of their shadow to embrace and which to transform. Jung called this selective shadow incorporation. They develop the ability to feel their anger without becoming cruel, acknowledge their selfishness without becoming narcissistic, and own their power without becoming manipulative. It's a conscious weaving of light and shadow into a complete tapestry. 4. Metamorphosis. 4. The emergence. The empathic abilities return, but in a refined, purified form. Jung documented that empaths at this stage could feel others' emotions, but weren't compelled to fix them. They could detect manipulation, but responded with compassion rather than anger, and could love deeply without losing their sacred center. 5. Metamorphosis. 5. The sovereignty. The final stage, Jung observed, was the development of archetypal consciousness, the ability to see beyond individual psychology to the larger, universal patterns governing human behavior and destiny. These empaths had become what Jung termed conscious bridges between the personal and transpersonal realms, living embodiments of integrated wisdom. The attraction pattern undergoes a radical change. Jung noted that sovereign empaths begin to attract a completely different archetypal constellation. Energy vampires and emotional parasites naturally fall away from your orbit because your aura no longer broadcasts the available for draining frequency. Instead, you begin attracting what Jung called individuated souls, people who have diligently done their own shadow work, who have embraced their own journey of wholeness, and who can meet you at your elevated level of consciousness. The self-abandonment chamber required the most terrifying shift of all, making decisions based on his own immutable truth, rather than perpetually bowing to external expectations. This meant disappointing some people, yes, but it also meant finally, gloriously, living authentically. The shadow basement work was ongoing, a lifelong commitment. But each integration made him more whole, more compassionate towards himself and others, and significantly less likely to project his unresolved issues onto the innocent world around him. This happens because you are no longer trying to heal from your wounds. You are healing from your wholeness, radiating it as a living example. Your aura radiates the vibrant possibility of integration, showing others, through your very being, that it is indeed possible to transform profound pain into enduring wisdom, exquisite sensitivity into unshakable strength, and deep wounds into magnificent gifts. The perpetual healing trap. Some empaths became addicted to transformation itself, constantly seeking new healing modalities rather than integrating their hard-won gains. Jung called this therapeutic materialism, treating healing as consumption rather than embodiment, a never-ending quest that avoids true presence. The isolation addiction trap. While some isolation was necessary for deep integration, Jung warned against using psychological evolution as an excuse for avoiding all human connection. The sovereign empath serves consciousness through engagement, not withdrawal, he noted. At work, the patient stopped performing and started contributing authentically, bringing his full, unvarnished self to the table. Some colleagues felt threatened by his transformation, but many others were deeply inspired. He discovered that authentic leadership, rooted in truth, was far more powerful and impactful than the exhausting charade of performance-based people-pleasing. Jung called this the ripple effect of individuation. When you cease participating in toxic psychological patterns, you compel those patterns to either evolve or dissolve. The ongoing maintenance practice Jung recommended was daily shadow check-ins, regularly examining their motivations, projections, and emotional reactions to ensure they remained conscious of their psychological processes, preventing regression and maintaining their hard-won clarity. Jung's final insight about sovereign empaths was perhaps his most profound. He believed they represented an evolutionary leap in human consciousness, absolutely essential for humanity's psychological development. The sovereign empath, Jung wrote, has become what I believe represents the next stage of human evolution. Individuals capable of feeling the full spectrum of human experience while remaining centered in their own truth. As more empaths learn to wield their extraordinary gifts consciously, with intention and wisdom, we move closer to what Jung envisioned as the conscious collective, a humanity that can feel deeply, process its vast shadow material, and integrate wholeness on a profound species level. The 7 dangerous places Jung identified are not just abstract concepts. They are tangible psychological environments you encounter every single day. The echo chamber, confirming your biases while weakening your mind's critical edge. The comparison arena, rendering your hard-won achievements meaningless in the endless race for more. The performance theater, rewarding the fake and punishing the real, eroding your very self. The silent suffering space, burying your essential needs beneath a fragile, false peace. The sovereign empath stands as living proof that consciousness can emerge, brilliant and unyielding, from catastrophe, that profound wisdom can be forged from the hottest fires of suffering, and that the very experiences that seem designed to destroy us may actually be divinely designed to transform us into our most authentic and powerful selves. As Jung wrote in his final notes on this phenomenon, the narcissist unknowingly serves as the dark priest of the empath's initiation. But Jung also illuminated the way out, not through mere escape or avoidance, but through conscious recognition, strategic, courageous choices, and the unwavering resolve to grow beyond what feels comfortable or familiar. The patient Jung treated in 1961 went on to become a therapist himself, a living testament to transformation, dedicated to helping countless others recognize and escape these very same psychological traps. If you recognize yourself in Jung's powerful description of empathic evolution, comment, "I am becoming sovereign." Your courageous transformation serves not just your own healing, but humanity's profound evolution. Jung, with his unparalleled wisdom, developed specific techniques for what he called psychic hygiene, essential practices for protecting, maintaining, and refining the empathic aura while consciously engaging with the world. The energetic cleansing ritual. Jung understood the need for daily rituals to clear absorbed energies and return to one's authentic frequency. This might involve sacred meditation, reflective journaling, restorative time in nature, or profound creative expression, whatever helps you clearly distinguish between your own vibrant energy and the energies you've absorbed from others. The key here is consistency. Jung understood that empaths require regular energetic maintenance, just as elite athletes require consistent physical training. The question, then, is not whether you will encounter these dangerous places. You will. The profound question is, will you recognize them when you do? Will you summon the inner courage to leave? And crucially, will you commit to creating the kind of psychological environment, both within yourself and around you, where others can also find their freedom, their wholeness, and their unique light? Jung believed that the very future of human consciousness hinges on individuals brave enough to choose psychological freedom over collective unconsciousness. The Conscious Boundary Protocol. Jung taught what we call energetic Aikido, the sublime ability to gracefully redirect others' projections and emotional burdens without absorbing them into your own field. When someone unconsciously tries to make you responsible for their emotions, you can acknowledge their pain with deep compassion, without, crucially, taking it on as your own. This requires what Jung called conscious compassion, feeling with others, extending genuine empathy while remaining unshakably centered in your own truth. You can witness their struggle. You can hold space for their pain without becoming enmeshed, entangled, or subsumed by it. The archetypal shield technique. Jung discovered that empaths can consciously invoke protective archetypes when dealing with particularly challenging energetic situations, such as encountering energy vampires or intense unconscious projections. You might call upon the warrior archetype for unshakable strength and protection, the wise elder for profound discernment and clarity, or the sovereign for an unshakable regal centeredness. These are not mere fantasy visualizations. They are potent ways of accessing different, powerful aspects of your own vast consciousness that are inherently equipped to handle challenging energetic situations with grace and power. Jung's final insight about empathic auras was both deceptively simple and profoundly liberating. The ultimate goal is not to get rid of your sensitivity, to dull your exquisite perception. The goal is to make it conscious, to wield it with intention. When you understand your empathic nature, as Jung did, you stop seeing it as a problem to be solved, a burden to be endured, and you start seeing it as a magnificent gift to be refined, a superpower to be mastered. Your aura transforms from a source of suffering into a powerful tool of consciousness, a beacon of light. The transformation is truly complete when you can walk into any room, feel everything that's happening energetically, perceive all the subtle currents, and then choose consciously how to respond. You are no longer at the mercy of your empathic gifts. You are the master of them, the conductor of your own energetic symphony. This doesn't make you cold or distant. In fact, conscious empathy is infinitely more powerful than unconscious empathy because it serves love rather than fear, consciousness rather than compulsion, and empowering choice rather than reactive patterns. Jung believed that empaths who achieve this profound level of integration become what he called wounded healers who have been healed. People who can authentically guide others through the same transformative journey because they have courageously walked the path themselves. Your rare aura, when consciously embodied, becomes a luminous beacon that shows others it is indeed possible to feel everything and remain whole, to love deeply and maintain sacred boundaries, to serve others while profoundly honoring yourself. Remember Jung's hidden truth about the rare aura that only true empaths carry. It's not rare because few people possess empathic abilities. It's rare because few empaths learn to wield these extraordinary abilities consciously, with intention and mastery. Jung wrote in his final wisdom-filled works, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For empaths, becoming who you truly are means transforming your deep wounds into profound wisdom, your exquisite sensitivity into unshakable sovereignty, your innate empathy into a conscious, deliberate choice rather than an unconscious, draining compulsion. Your empathic aura was forged in the purifying fires of early experience, shaped by the undeniable necessity of survival, and refined through every act of healing you've offered to others, every kindness, every moment of profound understanding. But it reaches its full magnificent radiance only when you learn, first and foremost, to heal yourself. Jung understood that the wounded healer archetype is just the profound beginning of the empathic journey, not its ultimate destination. The true completion, the magnificent apotheosis, is the sovereign healer, someone who can feel the full, vibrant spectrum of human emotion while remaining unshakably centered in their own truth, their own authentic power. Your aura is rare, not because you are broken, but because you have learned to transform brokenness into breathtaking beauty. Not because you are weak, but because you have developed a strength so profound it can hold the full, raw intensity of human experience. Not because you are meant to carry everyone's pain, but because you have learned to alchemize pain into potent, guiding wisdom. The world desperately needs empaths who understand their gifts as Jung did, not as burdens to be endured, but as sacred abilities to be consciously directed. Not as wounds that define you, but as powerful tools that serve consciousness, connection, and collective evolution. When you embody your empathic nature with full, radiant awareness, you become what Jung called a living bridge between the conscious and unconscious worlds. You help others access their own innate capacity for authentic feeling, for deep empathy, while impeccably maintaining your own energetic integrity. If you're ready to claim your empathic aura as the sacred gift it truly is, affirm it. My sensitivity is my superpower. Your journey from wounded healer to sovereign healer isn't just a personal transformation, it is a profound, essential contribution to collective healing. Every empath who integrates their gifts, every soul who steps into their sovereign power, makes it easier for countless others to do the same. Share this profound message with someone who needs to understand their empathic nature as a magnificent gift rather than a draining curse. And if you yearn to explore even more about empathic sovereignty, discover what happens when empaths fully reclaim their power. Remember, your sensitivity isn't too much. Your empathy isn't weakness. Your rare aura isn't a burden. It is a luminous bridge to consciousness that the world, now more than ever, desperately needs. Thank you for embarking on this journey. See you in the next dimension of self-discovery.